Great. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on future-proofing member education. And we're going to be talking about AI and the latest trends in online learning. My name is Alan Reed. I'm a director of Get Savvy. I'm particularly delighted to be tackling this topic today because it's a genuinely exciting time when it comes to learning and development, and the opportunities available to nonprofits as they set about either creating programs to educate their external stakeholders, or in some cases create learning programs for their internal colleagues, volunteers, and other people. It's possible now to do an awful lot more than it was a few years ago, and a lot of it's very cost effective, and a lot of it is quite revolutionary. So I'm delighted today to be talking about that with David Towson. David, do you mind introducing yourself a little bit and your role at NEBOSH?
Yeah, I'm a director of learning and assessment at NEBOSH, so I'm really interested in uh, creating assessments, and also I'm the AI lead within NEBOSH as well. So I'm particularly interested in AI and using it in assessment and learning.
Great, great, great. And NEBOSH, for anyone who's not familiar, is an awarding body, and it stands for the National Examining Board in Occupational Safety and Health. I think NEBOSH is a much better name. So great, David. Thank you so much. Let's crack on with the content. So first of all, just a little bit of housekeeping. We're recording everything. We'll send it to you. So don't worry about notes. Please do use the chat for any questions or issues. We'll be doing a Q&A session as part of the webinar. So if you're finding that any of the topics we're talking about are relevant to you, or I don't know what to do about this, or I'm stuck on this question, or should I be spending this money, or everybody wants to do this and I'm not sure, just drop it into the chat because other people are in the same position, I promise. And we'll tackle that as part of the session. So the content from this webinar is taken from our online self-paced course, which is called Managing Technology Change Projects for Business People. Essentially, if you're going to find yourself in any way involved or responsible for any kind of technology change in your organization, then that's the course for you. It's priced very low already, so I think it'll cost with the discount, etc. It'll cost something like 100 or 150 pounds to take the course, and it takes you through every stage of a technology journey from uh, uh, what do we do? How much money do we need to spend? How do I get it agreed and approved? Through to how to choose your correct technology partners, how to get your organization on board and resourced, etc., through go live testing, change management, and all of those things. Each of those phases of a project is covered in about 30-35 minutes of content, so very easy to consume. And delegates on this webinar will get a 50% discount on the course, and we'll send you everything you need to know following the webinar. So, a little bit about us. So, Get Savvy, we've been involved in membership and nonprofits and education for over 20 years. We found an awful lot of organizations get stuck. So what we've come up with is three models to help an organization go from wherever you are, which might be just thinking about it, or you're having a terrible time with your project, through to where you need to be, and delivering what your goals are. So we've always created very kind of transparent, price affordable models for getting organizations to where they need to be. 100% independent of any technology or supplier. So we work across pretty much all of the learning platforms available. Here are some examples from recent projects that we've worked with. We found that knowing a bit about the LMS is important. And we know a lot about most of them that are out there, but actually the real expertise is in things like how to develop your learning strategy, how to get it working, how to get it deployed, integrated, and making it a success in your with your audiences. So we have three models where we help people. which is essentially we have an entry level model, which is for people who haven't really started very often or in the very early stages, to get them all the way through to a completed LMS platform. And then we have other models where you may be already engaged with an LMS, or you think it's going to be a more ambitious program. And thereby we can help you develop that further and get it to completion. And sometimes you're different from everyone else, so we have a bespoke model. So then, quite often, our starting point with most organizations is to help with a little bit of the conceptualization. What do we mean by a learning and CPD strategy? What do we mean with our, what do we need to do with our current technology, and what do we need to do as a roadmap for that? Or how do we take our current content, which might be quite dated, could be a bunch of PDFs, video files, etc. How do we turn that into what modern learning content looks like? So we do short, sharp projects on all of those things. Okay, so the agenda today, starting at the top left, we're going to be talking about what modern organizations require in terms of learning tech, and it's a lot, just to spoil that ahead of time. So how then should a nonprofit keep up to date with that? How do you make sure that you're on the right tech, you're not constantly in a churn of replacement, but at the same time you're not falling behind. We then have a focus on AI in your learning and development program. There's a whole new world of things that you could do that you couldn't do even 2 years ago. A lot of it at very cost effective price points. As I say, we don't sell software, so we can talk about what's good and bad in that world. We'll go through a quick run through of a course that's been developed using AI tools. Just so you can see how that would work. And then we'll talk about emerging trends and wrap up in Q&A. So as I say, please do drop your questions in as we go so that we can tackle your questions in the Q&A section. So then moving on to what learning technologies are required for most organizations as they step into the world of learning and development, or you're already in the world of L&D, and how do you manage to keep yourself up to date with all of that? So let's talk about the why it demands so much tech. So essentially, learning technologies are evolving incredibly quickly. I'm involved. We're involved in multiple projects at the moment, and pretty much in everyone who is producing, whether it's an LMS system or a content creation system, has done a lot of change in the last year or two to drag in AI, to drag in other tools. So everything is changing, month by month, and so there are always these questions of when should I step onto this train? When should I change what I'm currently doing? So what we've then also got is that there's a proliferation of new software and tools that just didn't exist in some cases a year or two ago, or existed in a quite a hard to use, quite technical way. What modern tools have done, particularly in the last kind of 5 years and accelerating in the last couple, is serve it up to non-technical people. So you know what your audience requires, you know what learning and development you need to produce, but you don't have the technical skills to do it. Well, it's become easier and easier as a non-technical person to use those skills, to use those tools, which means that those tools now are part of your choice of what you should be deploying around your organization. What we also have are the challenges of ensuring that different things talk to each other and will carry on working as you add new things, and you've got the problems of things becoming obsolete, things not talking to each other, or not being integrated. And then, of course, on the positive side, the opportunities for doing more with less, for doing more with less money, for doing more with the resources you've got within your organization have never been greater. And there are projects I'm working on now where people have just completely transformed what they're offering to members, whilst keeping the headcount as it is, or maybe growing it a tiny bit, but just using these modern tools. The thing that we always emphasize and not to be forgotten is that whatever shiny pebble people rush off and get in terms of learning and development technologies, it all has to meet the old-fashioned requirement of it has to be data-driven. You have to have the clear insight into what your stakeholders are interested in and what they're doing. So there should be the basis of a CRM or student management or customer management system underpinning all of that, so that it's all fully integrated. What we also find that people worry about the basics, and they can worry about what fundamental technologies they need. So here are the technologies that I'll just put them all on the screen. That most organizations involved in providing a digital learning program, or even a learning program that's facilitated by online booking, etc., will require to some degree or another. So the learning management systems, they've been around for 25 years, but have changed beyond all recognition in the last 5 years, and as I say, increasingly in the last 2 years. So it's gone beyond simply serving up content to a member to actually being decision making about what content is presented, managing people's journey. There's a whole series of things. We'll talk about that in a bit. Uh, Webinar and classroom tools. So this has going well beyond Zoom, etc. But people being able to break out and do workshops together, to be able to manage tasks together, to be led by different tutors together. There are all sorts of technologies there, and they are changing very rapidly. Content creation is one of the areas that's changed probably the most in terms of new tools coming out over the last couple of years. So there's the family of tools that are built into learning management systems, whether it's the free, license-free learning management systems or the chargeable ones. They're all investing hugely in their content creation tools. But then you've got the dedicated content creation tools like Articulate 360, which will cost a couple of £1,000s a year per person. They are doing vast amounts in those tools to keep up and compete in terms of automatic wireframing, variations of the user journey, to meet the profile of different learners, all sorts of things to make it easier and non-technical to create very ambitious content. Lots and lots of assessment and evaluation that's real time, very context sensitive, very individualized, very personalized, and then collaboration and communication, where in some cases the AI can manage the student comms for you. So we're going to go through that in a little bit more detail. But those are the main technologies that most organizations will use in some variation or another, and they're all changing very rapidly. So what I'd like to talk about there is, David, do you mind if I just bring you in for a second, just to talk about how NEBOSH and other organizations you work with, how nonprofits more generally, how could they manage that balance of keeping up to date, but not always being in a constant state of churn? How do you know when it is time to leap into the fray of more modern tools or other things that you haven't been able to use before? Could I just get your thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, keeping up to date, is quite difficult, but at the same time, we subscribe to various sites, and you do that job as well to a certain extent. You inform your clients and keep them up to date by things like these webinars. So that's it. But I was also thinking that one of the things it's sometimes pushed out to you. So, for example, if you've already got an LMS, the LMS the hosting company or provider will frequently push out updates, and in fact, the creator of people like things like Moodle will have a sort of a pathway where they're steadily introducing enhancements. Like for example, Moodle 4.5, the most recent version has AI tools built into it.
Yes.
So, and I know you're going to look at that later. So some of this is it, but I was also thinking it's not just scanning and going to conferences and all this kind of stuff. At the back of all of my decision making is it actually useful for learning? And are we going to need it for our students, our types of content, and will it lead to a better outcome? Now, for learning, that's an important thing. If it's just a marketing shiny thing, then there are different considerations. And I know partly there's a marketing element because you want to get the money in and all that kind of stuff when you're selling courses. But the truth is that the guiding principle is you need to explore things which are actually going to help you improve learning for your students rather than necessarily chasing the latest shiny thing. I think I've learned over the years as well that it's kind of futile to invest heavily in things which are changing very rapidly
Yes.
because we were discussing earlier, by the time you come to launch it, it's already looked dated and a bit crap, really, you know. But actually, keeping an eye on that technology for when it becomes useful is good. And we've seen that again with AI that you look at later. The things that it can do now are more useful than the things that it could do 6 months ago, and therefore there might be a good use case.
Absolutely. And I like the point you made of start with, 'cause as it's always been, start with your content. And we'll talk about
Yeah.
that a bit more in a minute. But yes, start with your content and then look to see if this could improve it rather than, oh, look at this thing. I wonder if I could drag my content towards that.
Yeah.
No one does that consciously, or no one sets out
So
or declare they do that, but people can do it unconsciously.
it's a sort of
So,
tail wagging the dog, isn't it? And you
yes.
think, look, I need to be driven by design, instructional design, learning outcomes, things like that, if I actually want it to be useful to the students and to learn stuff, rather than just incorporating activities and videos and things just for the hell of it, because it can end up just being just really, really busy, and in the end, tiring because you come out the other end thinking, that was entertaining, but what did I learn?
It can be just distracting. Great. And we've all seen people drag video into everything, whether it's
Yeah.
appropriate or not. No, I really like the sound of that. Okay, so keeping up to date. So then the technology challenges. Let's cover this. So uh, here are the challenges for most organizations when it comes to keeping up to date to the right level and using the appropriate tool. We've talked about rapid technological advances. So it is changing, and we're in incredibly blisteringly fast-paced times at the moment. I like David's point, focus on your content. I think one of the elements of that is rather than always rushing off to get new things, it would be making sure that anything you are getting has a good roadmap, is investing properly, and is not going to be, something you need to change within a few years. So try and see that your current suppliers or new suppliers you're considering are people who are innovating themselves, and so the door is wide open for your own changes in the future. Deploying and integrating, that's an eternal challenge. The problem can be, of course, uh, finding the right solution and then having it work and talk to your existing technologies. Then you can lead to that impact where you've got this great system, but it's working in isolation, so you don't have access to the data and you're not getting the most out of it. User adoption and training, particularly difficult where if you are in a constant state of churn, the reality is that you're going to have to plateau every now and again for a year or two and then innovate again. So the challenge becomes when do you plateau? When so that your users and your learners and your learning development content creators can make the most of the tools they've got and the most of the content you're creating. Uh, Engagement and retention. Actually, this has become easier now than ever. There are better tools available now that will help you segment your data, segment your learners, link together what you're creating and what they might be interested in, and put it in front of them. But again, when do you adopt the tools to do that? And when do you change the tools that you've got? When do you go and beat up your current suppliers to say everyone else is doing this, I need to be doing it too? Um, Cost and budget constraints is an eternal challenge as well. If you've just done something in the last few years and then you're going back to your finance people and saying, "Oh, here are some fantastic things that are going to save us a lot of time," uh, you have to be able to make a very good case for that. What we are seeing positively for nonprofits now is that organizations that have known what they needed to do for 20 years, they've known they need to be this kind of personalized, relevant, targeted, and create variations of content for different types of people. They just haven't been able to do it because of the resource constraints. Well, those resource constraints are actually lessened with proper tools. You can do a lot more than you could before. So the challenge usually becomes making the case for it, being able to explain the case, and sometimes that needs help, and that's best done externally. Scalability and flexibility. This is also something that's improved in recent years. Uh, but the main challenge tends to be the costing element. So there are still far too many learning management systems, in my view, that charge per learner, that charge, per course consumption. And we see nonprofits all of the time starting off spending, a few £1,000s a year and then finding out it's gone up to tens of thousands a year without them noticing or meaning to. So there's the technical scalability is better than ever. The financial scalability needs some scrutiny pre-project, I find. Um, Measuring effectiveness and ROI. Most organizations don't do near enough of this, and it's one of the reasons they don't get enough money to spend on their own tool set and their own resources. Being able to prove back to your own organization the benefits that you're providing, a lot of which are not monetary, so you have to try harder to explain those benefits. Most organizations would do better to do more of that, and there are more tools available to do analytics and ROI measurement than ever before. So essentially, the constantly changing landscape does lead to its own challenges as well as opportunities. So there are case studies, there are justifications for making changes, but you've got to really do your homework to prove the case in most organizations that we work with. Great. So let's talk about how some organizations are using AI and opportunities for using AI in your own learning program, which you might be starting to get into now or might be approaching in the next year or more. So first of all, AI is not just salesperson's arm waving. There have been so many things that have been salesperson's arm waving. AI is not that. It's genuinely built into so many tools now and making such a difference. Even though we don't sell software, I'm prepared to use words like game changer and revolution and so on. We are living through it. So it's from everything from how the content is created, from wireframing and storyboarding, through and even coloring in the storyboards, through to how it's delivered, how it's presented, how people interact with it, and how you measure it afterwards. Every single bit of that is been changed and made more streamlined and effective for nonprofits. So essentially, it's going to expand. It's not going to go away. It's going to become an inbuilt part. So if you are in the L&D world, I would encourage anyone in that world to get to grips with this stuff. Attend webinars like this, carry on the conversation, and see where it's genuinely useful to you. It's going to be required on every CV. It's going to be required on every appraisal that people are showing that they're comfortable with this stuff and prepared to use the tools where it works for them. So let's take a look. Here are some of the benefits of the growing range of AI-driven learning management tools available to membership bodies and other nonprofits. So essentially, personalization, automation, and personalized learning are huge areas. So as I mentioned just briefly, we've always known that we should have different variations of content for different people, or that we should create some content for this audience. But we just haven't got the resources to do it. And there's only 1,000 of these people, and I've only got one block of content, and I'm going to create it for these 5,000 people. So we've always had neglected audiences or content that's the one size fits all because we haven't had the resources. With AI-driven tools, we can create content faster. We can create content that is variations of one piece of content, and we can create it in such a way that it's modern and exciting without having to always have some external company doing everything for you at £1,000 a day, and so on. One of the main areas where people are adopting AI as well is in the area of automation and workflow. So essentially, automation and workflow has been around for many, many years, but it's now more accessible. It's now much easier to tell it what you want. It's now much easier to tell it about yourself so that it can answer questions, create FAQ sections for you, actually interact in some cases, although that's still a little bit rare, do the interaction with your members. So the whole process of making sure people turn up, making sure that they're surveyed afterwards, making sure they get everything they need, making sure they pay, making sure whatever, all of that automation is now very easy to switch on, and people are adopting it very rapidly, even if it's an adjunct, an add-on to the main tool set they're using. Um, so I'm working on projects now where people have learning content that branches from this way or this way, depending on your status as a member. Are you a student? Are you this? Are you that? Or depending on your interactions within the course. And that used to be seen as incredibly expensive and incredibly cumbersome. It's now perfectly realistic to do that, even if it's only a little parentheses on the main course, or rather than an entire different direction. That's now becoming quite common. Um, and then even before people come into your world of learning, the one on the bottom left, intelligent content recommendations, we have projects where people coming to the website are getting personalized suggestions of what content matters most to them. We're having people who complete this course or that event or click to read that piece of content, and all of that information is then used to steer them towards the next piece of beneficial content for them. So the take up is higher, the sense of value is higher. There's this virtuous circle that comes out of that. The world of assessments is changing entirely I won't say entirely, too much hyperbole, but it's changing substantially with AI. So um, people are now able to give more elaborate types of exam responses. People can write paragraphs of text. They can provide drawings online, and all of those things used to require human evaluation, and that's no longer the case. So to be used judiciously, not everywhere, but essentially something that is changing the world of how things are assessed and how feedback is given to the learner. Um, and then essentially that whole process of personalization and guiding the learner is changing completely. So David, do you mind if I just invite you in at this point? So these are areas where people can use rapidly changing tools. What are your thoughts on whether they should? What would drive someone to the should as opposed to I can, in your view,
Yeah,
please?
so I always think, I mean it's really interesting. I've been reading a book for quite a while, and it's one of my favorites actually, called Evidence Informed Learning Design, and it's got some really good thought-provoking stuff and myth busting. But essentially, it's let's in our choices as instructional designers and teachers in the classroom. Um, you need to think about what you're trying to achieve, the learning outcomes, and whether it has impact in your choices. So that's the driving thing. So, for example, automated assessments, there are some regulatory issues to do with that in the summative assessments, or anything which contributes to the final thing. But you can see that you can use it in a sort of a formative way throughout, by giving instant or near instant feedback on a variety of activities. And obviously, you need to make sure that that feedback is real and constructive, and actually leads to change in understanding or
Mm.
thinking or skill of the student. But you can see that could really help in a sort of a medium length course. Obviously, it's not going to help in an hour's long course, but or not, because they're not actually going to change very much or have that many opportunities. That is, so I think that has good things. The automation, I think, is useful for taking out some of the donkey work. But I think for me, the great benefit of AI driven stuff is more about how it can be interact with the student or with the instructional designer, the person creating the course, to make something better than it could have been. So
Yes.
it's collaborative effort rather than just simply replacing. We had a talk earlier on. I can't remember whether it's a quote in here or somewhere else that I've seen it. Let's say it's my quote.
Yes.
But it's the answer to the question, will AI replace me? And the answer, of course, is no, but you will be the person who uses AI will replace the person who does not. So if you resist AI, then
Yes.
it's your own detriment. But I see this as a partnership. But yes, it can be definitely helpful in automation. But I think for me, it's becoming less about efficiency and cost, but more about increasing my creativity by using it collaboratively. And so some of the tools that we'll look at later, where that is put in there for people to experiment and search and research, to me are kind of more useful specs. Yeah.
I like the sound of that. We've been talking for decades about how to make the content more interactive, so that it's not just a passive role of broadcast to the learner. They might as well be watching a video or reading a PDF. How do we make it more interactive? And I think that's one of the main things that AI is enabling. So there's the kind of check your understanding elements through the content, and other areas where the learner can interact with the content. All sorts of drag and drop and fill in the blanks, and what have you understood from this, and do you understand that, or do you understand that? And all of that has become so much easier to do than ever before. Fantastic. Thanks so much, David. All right, so let's carry on from there. So let's talk about some examples of AI-driven tools, and how they're increasingly being used. AI-powered learning management. So pretty much everyone, including Moodle, to a lesser extent Canvas that I've seen so far, but the open source ones as well. Um, are adopting AI into their solutions because they have to. They have no choice. If you're going out and shopping and you're asking, what's your AI solution? And they say, I don't know what you're talking about. Then you're not going to pick them. So the LMS itself provides lots and lots of tools for tailored content creation, but also creating a personalized experience, responsive learning, interactive learning, as we've been talking about. And pretty much everyone is moving into that world. AI video tools. There is a word of caution here that you shouldn't do something just because you can, or drag your content towards something just because it looks fun. Think about the examples of PowerPoint years ago, where suddenly everyone's transition from slide to slide always flashed around and disappeared appeared out of nowhere, and all these distractions. Then a year later, everyone was thinking that looks incredibly dated. So to be used judiciously. But video is an incredibly important part of learning for many organizations, and now it's easier than it ever has been to create video content, to tailor it to your learning, things like transcription, closed captioning, and so on. The tools for making video affordably part of your learning are greater than ever. Content creation, we've talked about that. I won't go on anymore, but all of the tools that do content creation have developed AI elements. What that means for most people is it's becoming less and less technically challenging to create more and more sophisticated content. So the specialist agencies that used to exist, or that do exist to create specialist content, they're finding the line pushed back and back and back where they're required, because you can do more in-house than you ever could before. Personalized assessments, we were just talking about that. Predictive analytics, again, I would always encourage any nonprofit to do a lot more of this than they do currently, because it is a big part of proving the value of what you do, and making sure that you're tailoring what you do to your next audience. So it used to be quite hard to do this, quite hard to get the data out of one system into another, and where's my information architect when I need them? Oh, we can't afford one. Now those things are being served up to you, and it's easier than creating a graph in Excel now, because they know the kind of things that their customers want, and they provide ready-made templates and analytics and dashboards and BI tools to do that. So again, vastly easier than it ever has been in the past. And then, of course, tools for collaborative learning. This collaboration, by the way, extends to creating the content in the first place between teams. Sometimes that's done internationally. We do it internationally. So there are AI-driven tools for how you collaborate, and what's waiting for you to do, and your next task, and so on. But actually, more to do with your learners themselves working through your content, working in teams, interacting with your tutors. and your tutors being able to see who's done what, who's late for what, all of those kind of things. So great possibilities and great opportunities to take advantage of this. And pretty much everyone who's trying to sell things to you will be extolling their offerings in these areas. So then let's talk about Moodle because a solid kind of third of the people here will be on Moodle-based platforms. Might be Totara, might be Moodle. So it's worth taking a minute for that. So as David mentioned, Moodle 4.5 has taken on AI. They've really embraced it. So it allows integration with various AI providers. And it also has content tools for content creation, better use of text and images than before, providing much more interaction with the content as you work your way through it. The OpenAI chatbot is easy to add to Moodle. So to be used with care, but I have seen some examples where this is genuinely useful. So you can train it very much about your content, train it very easily about your IP, in your industry sector, and then it can be available as part of your learner journey for people to ask plain English language questions and get plain English language answers to it as well. Very high value when you've got a tutor dealing with a high volume of students who are asking fairly routine questions a lot of the time. OpenAI question generator is something that sounds like a cheat, and maybe it is, but actually it's genuinely useful too. So as part of you using the tool to present your content or curate and deliver your content, it can also create the assessment elements for you. And those assessment elements aren't just textual, yes, nos. It can then suggest interaction types for the different questions that it's suggesting for you, and create very sophisticated question banks off the back of that. So this particular plugin is great for creating interactive learning activities. So you can start off with very flat content, your PDFs, etc., your white paper on the website, and it can turn it into something that people can interact with and certainly pace through in a more interactive way. And then, of course, turn that into portable things like SCORM files that can be delivered through mobile devices and other technologies. And then AI reporting. The Lion AI reporting are now genuinely sophisticated ways of interacting with your data and presenting your data that's available for free. I can't complain at the price. So these things are things that the Moodle platform and the Moodle community has embraced, and we're seeing a huge amount of take up from that as a result of those things being introduced. So the summary of all of that is that there are significant benefits to this new tool set, including how you create and deliver your content, but also how you analyze it. And then, of course, saving time on what David calls donkey work. I agree with that. To free up your time for things that you might not otherwise get the opportunity to do. So, David, I know you're familiar with the world of Moodle. What are your thoughts on what open source? Let's widen it. What open source and unlicensed platforms are doing with AI? Do you think they're keeping up, or do you think there's
Yeah, I think so.
a correlation?
Um, you know, to say it's free, I mean, it's not
Mm.
free, as you
We
know,
talked
right?
about that last
Yeah.
webinar. You're absolutely right. No, free is the wrong term.
Free as in freedom, I think it's often called. That's the sort of Linux approach. Free as in freedom, not free as in free of charge.
Yes.
So I've always liked that. I've been a Linux user most of my working life and worked with Moodle and things like that, and Mahara as well, the social networking platform as well. And you just think I like the ethos and slightly, their altruism in some respects as well, that they're doing it for the good of the community. and the fact that lots of little almost not exactly train spotter types, but they could be forgiven for doing that. They're really good at what they do, that are moving it forward very quickly. And it's not even random. They do actually plan it, and they have a roadmap of where they're going, which they publish, and they make it available to you so that when it is made available, it's stable and solid. So, you can't really go wrong with that. But at the same time, you might get something a lot more bespoke to your needs if you pay for it and go for other things. So I think there's pros and cons, but I've always really from the just the sort of ethos of it, always liked open source stuff. And I can't explain why, but I just seem to have a natural soft spot for it.
Yes, and my thoughts on it are always that if you um, if you're not compromising on what you need to be able to do, then you're vastly better off taking those tens of thousands of pounds that you might pay on license fees and using it for the other things that are not free on Moodle anyway, but resource, time from experts, your own content creation and so on. So that's always been my preference. And I've seen over recent years that for the great majority of projects, there's nothing they can't do on the open source platforms, so therefore you need to make a special case for the chargeable ones.
I
Great, thank
think
you so much.
it
Yes,
might not
please.
be going. I think one of the things is in any platform, it might not, the roadmap is important because it might not be going in the direction that you are going. And hence, for example, if you are, I always find that Moodle seems to, because of its background, be more an easier fit with things like universities and colleges and the way they're set up. And so you get forks from it, like Totara and things like that, originally a fork from Moodle, that are more orientated towards in-company training, and they've got extra little bells and whistles. But initially, it was just additional plugins. So you could do it yourself, couldn't you, in Moodle by adding the
Yes,
plugin.
yes.
But actually, if they've got all the bits which better suit your kind of business, then why not go for that? Yeah.
Absolutely. And we've had somebody drop a total question into the Q&A, and we'll come to that. So please do remember to drop your own questions into the Q&A so that we can tackle that. Anything about your own project, anything, how it relates to you. Okay, so moving on from there. I'd like to do a quick poll just to understand where people are in their own in their own world of learning, please. So what I'll do is just bring up the poll. And if I could just ask people just to spend a few seconds, because we can then understand where people are. There are three questions on here about your current position, where you are in your learning journey. So the first one is, are you considering a URL LMS or replacing an LMS? And that's kind of a yes, no. And then if you could also, the next question is, what's your current position in relation to an LMS? You've got one and it's working really well for you. You have one, but it's not really, you're not getting the best out of it yet, or it's a disaster, or you don't need one at all. And then how would you describe, moving away from the technology, how would you describe your learning and development offering to your members? It's great, but you're having trouble delivering it, or it's great, or it's not great, you need to invest in it. So if I could just get people's thoughts on where you are, I'll just give it a few more seconds on those, and then I'll pause and share the results. Okay, so if I just go through the results really briefly, so in terms of people who are considering a new LMS or replacing, it's about 50-50. And so that's interesting. But I guess it's a self-selecting audience in some ways. In terms of your current position in relation to LMS, only about a third, I would say it's in there and it's working well. Maybe somewhere towards a half are saying you're not getting the best out of it, and that supports our own research. People are struggling with their LMS projects, partly why we did this program, and then about a quarter are considering getting an LMS in future. Slight repetition of the first question. Um, the interesting thing is, how would you describe your current learning and development offering? Only about a quarter are really happy and that it's being delivered well, and everyone else either has great content but can't deliver it well, or needs to improve both the content and the technology. So so yes, people know that they've got a lot of work to do on that. So great, thank you very much for that, everybody. So what I'll then do is just crack on from there really briefly. Let me just go through a really quick presentation of a course that's been delivered using AI based tools. So first of all, I'll jump off to the website and sign in. Just go through the sign in process really quickly. Once I've signed in, I'll then, as a learner now, I've got my dashboard. Here are the courses that are available that I've done. I've actually got the course Managing Technology Change project, so I'm going to jump into that. I can see I've already completed it, but I can see it again. Um, this course takes you through every phase of a technology change project in your own organization with you as the project manager. So it's scenario based and goes through your different project phases. So everything from the business case and conceptualization through choosing a supplier, preparing your own organization, testing, go live, change management, etc. Let's jump into the supplier selection module. That's going to take me through first of all, introducing you to my AI-driven trainers. These are the people that are going to talk to me throughout the course and tell me what I must do and what I must not do. And then a quick guide through the project pathway. So the project pathway is essentially a project that you are responsible for. So business case, planning and your own organizational resources, getting your requirements together, choosing your vendor, etc. And then from there, what we then have is the need to go through and work through what your learning objectives are on that. So from there, what we would do is essentially. Sorry, let me just jump into the supplier selection module. Uh, the first thing, of course, is making sure that everyone understands what your learning objectives are. This covers what your brief is as part of the project. This covers the stakeholders that you need to satisfy as part of the project. And in this case, my stakeholders will talk to me and say, I'm the finance director, you need to do this as the project manager. I'm the operations director, I need you to do that. What we find now is most courses that we create, there's always documents that you can interact with, documents you can download and use in the real world. In this case, as part of a vendor selection, you'll have things that, beautiful templates for things like supplier scorecards and comparing your suppliers, reference checklist and feedback, for instance. And then it starts taking you through things like, all right, here are the steps to make sure that you have a good supplier selection process. Here are what you need to do at each step. And then we then go through different scenarios. Scenarios are very often AI driven. So, for instance, as part of the scenario, we might say, no one can decide on the preferred supplier. Your evaluation team are logged down and log jammed on the correct supplier. How would you, in your scenario, you could do this, or this. What should you do? And then you have conversations with different stakeholders to then work out and unblock that process. And as David was talking about earlier, that kind of whole check your understanding in the middle of content, we find that to be really important. So here are the kind of examples we have where, we've covered the supplier selection process. What would you do to make that work well? This is part of the content. Yes, I'll select yes on all of those, press submit. And then the feedback I get is not only no, you didn't get it right, it's telling me where I didn't get it right and what bit of the content I might want to look at again. So I'll say okay to that and move to the next question. In this case, it's asking me to put things in the correct order, so I'll quickly drag those in and submit that. And again, I'll get that wrong. So it's then telling me what I can do to get that right and giving me guidance, not just a kind of yes, no. At the end of that process, let me just jump to the end of the module. It's telling me, oh, sorry, you've not passed this particular module, but I can retake it and continue. So everything is kind of encouraging. It's all very personalized and targeted for me. So if I continue out of there and jump out back to my dashboard, which is, the different modules, I'll just quickly jump into the assessment area, because the assessment area we find is one of the main things that's changed as part of AI-driven tools. So it's moved away from very much kind of just yes nos. We have multiple choices. We have different scenario based questions. We have things where people can, I don't know, choose the missing word, etc. in this example. So everything tends to be very interactive, lots of variation, trying to keep people awake and trying to keep them involved in it. In this particular course, once I finish and I pass my assessment, I can then download my certificate, and I can see my accreditations down here that I get, and my digital verification link, etc. So giving that kind of reward for having passed the course and making sure that people feel that they've had the real achievement out of it. So if I jump back into the presentation from there, just in the interest of time. What I'd like to cover really quickly on there before we get to the QA is just to talk about some of the emerging trends that we're finding over and above what we've already talked about. So just really quickly, one of the major emerging trends, and this is what salespeople will talk to you about all of the time, but there is some reality behind it: hyper personalization. That's where things are going over the next couple of years, is my view. I'll be interested in David's view. But making sure that whole kind of one size fits all and spray and pray and all of that, because people just didn't have the money to create the kind of content and learning journeys before, that's going away. So hyper tailored, hyper personalized, lots of variations that are based on your segment, based on your personal profile as a learner. Immersive is becoming real. This is very much just on the horizon. But we are seeing that people plunging into scenarios in a much more in-depth way, having it doesn't have to be VR goggles and all of that, although there's some of that. But in the main thing, it's plunging into scenarios, interacting with bots that are pretending to be people and look an awful lot like people, and with whom you can have pretty intelligent conversations. So this kind of thing is becoming more common and is helping people interact with learning content that reflects the real world to a higher degree than ever before. Micro learning is something I see being talked about quite a lot now on the notice boards and discussion forums. So this is literally 2 minutes of learning, literally 5 minutes of interaction. So get it, it's much more the kind of Duolingo model, where you can do something for 5 minutes a day and you'll learn a bit of French, and you might put it down for a week and then pick it up later. But actually, if you ask someone to do an hour's course on French, they're not going to do it. So that's becoming more of a feature. And then mobile, meeting people where they are, is very, very alive now in the world of learning and development. So David, can I just get your thoughts? We're running out of time a little bit, but just get your thoughts. These are appearing on the horizon. How much of this do you think? Well, just park it and leave it. And how much do you have any areas of it where you're thinking it might be exciting and relevant?
Yeah, I mean, mobile learning is interesting because I think that's always been an issue well, not an issue, always been a requirement. I think with the increased not availability, but with the increased capability of smartphones, they can do far more. So I think you basically, the reality is people use a variety of ways of consuming learning. So I think you've just got to cater for laptop, mobile phones, tablets, and all that kind of stuff, because people want to do stuff when it's convenient for them. And sometimes, like for example, you wouldn't sit an exam or a test that's for a qualification on your mobile phone because it's a bit,
Mm.
you just wouldn't. You'd want to be comfortable, calm, collected. So you probably want to be doing that at a laptop or something like that. So I think you've just got to cater for that. The immersive learning, we did tinker with that, particularly augmented reality. And I found that very useful, where you would have something in your course, maybe if you weren't accessing it on your mobile anyway, with like a QR code and an app on your phone, and then you could actually explore 3D models quite nicely like that. That actually worked really, really well. But I get the hyper personalized learning. I find it interesting the way that it's termed, because people are running out of words to describe it. It is just personalized learning, but deeper, more personalized.
Yeah,
But
new and improved
yeah, so
with
I
vitamin
get all
D.
of
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. No, so I'm really glad to hear you said the mobile learning. I think is going somewhere, and will be a big part of a lot of things in the next year or two. And yes, we've been doing a lot of some of this already. I think the VR thing is a little further out on the horizon. The one I would pick from there, just my personal hobby horse. Maybe I'll change it in a month's time. But the micro learning thing, I think for a lot of organizations, that's becoming. That's
I
becoming something.
actually I find it useful with some things and not so useful with others. I think it's very domain related, because you it, some things aren't amenable to doing
Mm,
in a tiny chunk because
no,
it
I agree with that.
fragments it
Absolutely. Yes.
too much. So some things there's a natural right. So for example, let's take translation. You wouldn't generally stop translation and do micro learning word by word, right? Because you need to understand the context in a sentence or a paragraph. So a natural break is to take it to the end of the paragraph or sentence.
Absolutely.
So that's that. But in something like a maths problem, you'd want to get to the end of that, and that might not fit into 2 minutes. But other things like fixing a piece of equipment might be really. I mean, I've had lots of that just myself. Like, how do I change the screen in my laptop? I'll just watch a 2 minute video. And it might be accelerated, but there we go. It gives me some tips, and I'm away.
Fantastic. I agree. Absolutely. It depends on your content and the
Yeah.
courses that you're creating. So great. Let's just quickly get from there. We're into the Q&A. We've got a couple of good questions in the Q&A. So first of all, let me take the question from Anna Leatherdale. Hope you don't mind me naming you. Sorry, too late. If you're using AI assessments, how easy is it for the learner to use AI to answer the questions? I'm exactly with you, Anna. I'm always thinking of ways that people can cheat on these things. So, David, I have thoughts on that. What are your thoughts,
Yeah, it
please?
depends on the other things that you've got in place. So, for example, we, if it's a completely open book, uninvigilated exam, then there's a great capacity for students to cheat. So you need if you've got that kind of exam, you need mitigation measures in here. So active things like we do, we use technology to try and identify whether something's been AI generated. But of course, the problem is so many things are stealth AI, like Grammarly, for example, which is legitimate, or researching something which might be a legitimate use of it because it's included in Google, search,
Hmm.
I mean, AI stuff and spam filters and all the rest of it. So it is tricky, but if you've got an assessment that is closed book and invigilated, or at least that is a component, then it reduces the risk of that. But my particular view, which doesn't necessarily reflect my organization or whatever, but my particular view and my direction is people are going to be using AI. People
Yes.
need to learn how to use AI responsibly, and actually to help them and not do the job for them. So part of it is educating them on legitimate uses and useful uses, but without actually, you know, removing their intellect from it. Because the truth is, if they've used the AI to do their assessment, you might as well send your certificate to the AI and tell it, oh, how wonderful, you've performed well, because the student has not been part of it other than to cut and paste stuff into it, which really isn't.
Yes,
isn't value
absolutely.
added.
So,
So I
and
think
we're
it's,
sorry,
yeah,
David. Yes,
yeah. So they will use it. So
yes,
I think it's accepting that reality and either embracing it and educating and changing your assessment to sort of accommodate that, or trying the other people have gone down the path of trying to stamp it out completely. But that to me seems impractical. I think we've got to accept that people use it. Yeah,
yes, and I agree with with a lot of that. It's a constant arms race.
yeah,
And of course, depending on what kind of assessments you are doing, I think accepting that there is going to be some use of AI. I've worked on a project in the last year or two where there was they're using new invigilation tools
yeah.
that will monitor what you're looking at on your screen and so on. That's just another chess move, and now the students
Yeah,
will find a
we
way
use
of
all of that, and it is an arms race because there are even tools out there which are designed to, if you've got AI output, to then use AI to disguise it as as non-AI output. And,
yes,
and 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 you think some people have been accidentally caught by using Grammarly to improve their grammar, and I think actually that's probably reasonable.
yes.
It's not actually changing, it's making it better grammar, it's not actually providing the
Yeah.
answer.
So, and Ian Fendick has asked a similar question, and I think the answer is we don't have, there isn't a silver bullet for this,
No, there
and
isn't.
I'm not
No.
suggesting anyone on this webinar thinks that there is. I think there is an element of accepting AI tools will be used in some areas. There's no, and it's a constant arms race to where you decide where your fences are, where your red lines are, and but you'll have to end up using technology to try and protect those red lines. But have a good think about whether they are genuinely red lines. So then the final question that I can do is really quickly is, are these Moodle AI tools also available in Totara from Nicola? And the answer is yes on that, by the way. I happen to know that, but you have to go and push your provider. You go and push them and say, I hear this is what I should be aiming for these days. Others are doing it. Why aren't you? And just make sure that you are in that front line of people who are early adopters, etc., for these tools that are definitely part of the tool set now. Great. Okay, so then just to wrap up, if I may, as I mentioned before, we do offer very transparent fixed price models for getting you from wherever you are now to the point where you do have a successful learning and development platform in use and working, and that's independent of the technology. We do not sell software. Great. I will send that to you. And then thank you very much for attending. We'll provide you with the presentation and the recording. We'll also provide you with a 50% discount for the course for technology projects for business people. And we'll then also invite you to have a conversation about your own project and where you're going with that. We do free pointers as well and guidance. It's not just how we can help you. Our upcoming webinars, we have this whole program um, on learning and development in the non-profit sector because there are a lot of struggling projects, as the survey has shown here. So I really hope to see you on a future webinar. There's a lot of exciting topics that we're covering in the world of learning and development. We'll send you the links to those as part of the follow-up. David, can I just say I am so grateful for your insights and for your comments. And for the guidance to people who may be a year or
It's a
two
pleasure.
behind where you are at NEBOSH.
Right, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody, and look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Thank you.